Look, nobody at the Galactic Military Academy expected the human to actually show up. The acceptance letter was basically a clerical error mixed with a bureaucratic dare, the kind of paperwork mistake that happens when you process applications from 47 different species and someone checks the wrong box. But there he was, Cadet Jake Martinez, standing in the reception bay of Station Krill 7 with a duffel bag, and the kind of smile that immediately made Drill Instructor Sergeant Vexthor want to punch something. Vexthor was what you'd get if you crossed a dragon with a really angry gym teacher, and then added 2 extra arms just for dramatic effect. His species, the Krill, had produced the galaxy's most feared warriors for 3,000 years. They were the gold standard for military discipline, the benchmark for combat effectiveness, and absolutely convinced that this human would be crying for his mother before lunch. Cadet Martinez, Vexthor rumbled, his voice like gravel in a blender. You stand before the finest military institution in the galaxy. 47 species train here. The strong become legends. The weak wash out in days. You are weak. Your species assessment says you come from a planet with barely adequate gravity, average atmospheric composition, and embarrassingly fragile biology. Give me one reason why I should not send you home right now. Jake's smile somehow got wider. Well, sir, I'm already here. Seems like a waste of the shuttle fuel to send me back before we even try. The other cadets, arranged in perfect formation behind Vexthor, started making sounds. Cadet Zilnor, an insectoid whose species had compound eyes and way too much confidence, literally chittered with laughter. Cadet Thump, who looked like someone had taught a boulder to walk and then sent it to military school, made a grinding noise that probably counted as amusement in rock person language. Cute, Vexthor said, and somehow made the word sound like a threat. The human thinks he is funny. Let me explain something to you, Martinez. This facility has trained champions, heroes, and legends. Our equipment is designed to push alien physiology to absolute limits. Our course has a 40% washout rate in the first week alone. You will not survive day 1. Guess we'll find out, sir, Jake said pleasantly. Vexthor leaned down, all 4 arms crossed until he was eye level with the human. That smile, Cadet. I am going to personally remove it from your face. Report to Barracks Bay 7. Training begins at dawn cycle. Dismissed. Jake saluted, grabbed his bag, and walked past the formation of alien cadets who parted like he was contagious. Which, to be fair, he might have been. Nobody had actually checked human diseases against galactic species compatibility very thoroughly, as Jake disappeared down the corridor. Technician Blorp, a nervous blob of translucent gel who maintained the station's equipment, oozed up to Vexthor. Sergeant, did you read the full species file on humans? It says their homeworld is classified as... I do not care what their homeworld is classified as, Vexthor interrupted. I care that he follows orders and meets standards. If his species file mattered, he would not be here. Blorp made a gurgling sound that might have been concern. But sir, it says... Dismissed, technician. Blorp oozed away, muttering something about repair budgets and bad feelings. Vexthor watched the corridor where the human had vanished and felt something he had not experienced in years. Doubt. Not about whether the human would fail. That was inevitable. But about why, exactly, the human had been smiling like someone had just told him the galaxy's best joke and he was the only one who got the punchline. Dawn cycle at the Galactic Military Academy was not gentle. Lights snapped on with retinal-searing intensity. Alarms blared in 17 different frequencies to accommodate various species' hearing ranges, and Sergeant Vexthor's voice came through the barrack speakers like an avalanche with anger management issues. All cadets report to Training Bay 1. You have 3 minutes. Anyone late runs the perimeter. In full gravity. Move. Jake was already dressed, which apparently surprised his bunkmate Zilnor, who was still trying to figure out which of his 6 legs went into which boot equivalent. How are you ready? Zilnor clicked accusingly. You are supposed to be slow and weak and confused. I set an alarm, Jake said, helping Zilnor with what might have been a boot or possibly a hat. Also, I'm used to waking up at 5 a.m. This is practically sleeping in. Training Bay 1 looked like someone had designed a gym inside a spaceship and then decided it needed to be 20 times more intimidating. Equipment hummed with barely contained energy. Holographic displays showed previous training records, and in the center of it all stood the gravity chamber, a cylindrical nightmare of reinforced steel and ominous warning labels. Vexthor stood before the assembled cadets, all forearms behind his back in a pose that screamed disappointed father figure with anger issues. The gravity chamber. Every soldier must operate in variable gravity conditions. Standard test is 10 minutes at 3 times your species' homeworld gravity. This is not negotiable. This is not optional. Cadet Zilnor, you are first. Zilnor chittered nervously, but entered the chamber. Through the reinforced viewing window, everyone watched as the insectoid's exoskeleton creaked under the pressure. He lasted 9 minutes and 40 seconds before stumbling out, mandibles clicking in exhausted pride. Cadet Thump went next and stood there like, well, a rock. He made it the full 10 minutes but admitted afterward that it was slightly uncomfortable, which for a species evolved on a high-gravity planet was basically screaming. Cadet Martinez, Vexthor said, and his tone suggested he expected this to be entertaining. Your species evolved on a planet with gravity so weak that you probably float everywhere. This will be educational. Enter the chamber. Jake walked in, and the door sealed behind him with a pressurized hiss. Beginning test, Blorp announced from the control panel. 3 times standard gravity in 3, 2, 1. The chamber hummed. Jake's knees bent slightly as the gravity increased, but he stayed standing. In fact, after a moment, he started stretching. Is he warming up? Zilnor asked, confused. Cadet Martinez. Vexthor's voice boomed through the chamber's speakers. This is not recreation time, this is a test. Right, sorry, sir, Jake called back. Then he dropped and started doing push-ups. The training bay went silent. What is he doing? Thump rumbled. Dr. Quillix, the station's chief medical officer who looked like someone had crossed a very judgmental parrot with a doctor's coat, was frantically scanning her datapad. His vital signs are elevated, but not dangerously so. He is exerting himself, but his physiology is compensating. This does not match the species assessment at all. Vexthor's eyes narrowed, increased to 5 times gravity. Sir, that is above protocol, Blorp gurgled nervously. Do it. The chamber's hum intensified. Jake paused in his push-up, stood up, and started jogging in place. Hey, is there a higher setting? Earth's gravity is 1.0 on the standard scale, but it's actually pretty intense once you're used to it. This is good, though. Good cardio warm-up. His planet has standard gravity, Vexthor said slowly, checking his datapad. That is what the assessment says. Maybe, Jake called back, still jogging, but living in it every day since birth means we adapt pretty well. Also, we invented this thing called exercise where we deliberately make stuff harder for ourselves to get stronger. It's a whole thing. The gravity chamber made a sound that machinery should definitely not make. A grinding, protesting screech of metal under stress. Blorp, Vexthor said carefully. The hydraulic system is showing stress fractures, Blorp said, voice rising in pitch. The chamber has never operated at this level for this long. It is not designed for sustained high-gravity output with an occupant who is jogging. Turn it off. The gravity normalized. Jake walked out looking slightly flushed but otherwise fine. That was fun. When do we do the actual hard stuff? Behind him, the gravity chamber made one final wounded sound, and then its main hydraulic line ruptured, spraying fluid across the bay floor. That, Blorp said miserably, checking his datapad, is going to take 3 days to repair. That chamber has never broken. It has been in operation for 40 standard years. Every alien in the training bay stared at Jake, who was helpfully trying to mop up hydraulic fluid with a towel. Cadet Martinez, Vexthor said slowly. Explain to me how your species survives on a planet with standard gravity if this is your physical capability. Jake shrugged. We're pretty good at surviving, sir. Evolution was kind of intense back on Earth. Lots of things trying to kill us, so we got good at not dying. It's basically our main skill. Vexthor looked at his datapad, scrolled down past the basic species information, and found the planetary classification for Earth. His scales went pale. Class 12 Death World, he read aloud. Extreme environmental variance, aggressive megafauna, atmospheric oxygen levels considered toxic to most species, and rated maximum hazard for colonization attempts. Yeah, Jake said cheerfully. Home sweet home. After the gravity chamber incident, which was now being referred to as the hydraulic situation by a traumatized Blorp, Sergeant Vexthor decided to move on to something that did not involve expensive equipment with warranties. The obstacle course was old-fashioned, brutal, and supposedly species-neutral in its capacity to cause suffering. The course, Vexthor announced, gesturing to what looked like a war crime designed by a sadistic engineer, is 2 kilometers of obstacles designed to test speed, agility, pain tolerance, and tactical thinking. It features acid pits with pH levels that will burn most organic matter, razor wire that will shred inadequate hide, and automated plasma turrets set to stun, which I assure you still hurts quite badly. Zilnor looked at the course and then at Jake. Human, I will go first and set a time you cannot possibly beat. Then perhaps you will understand your place here. Sure thing, Jake said agreeably. Good luck. Zilnor launched himself at the course with the desperate energy of someone trying to prove a point. He was fast, incredibly agile, and managed to avoid most of the acid pits by jumping with his powerful legs. The razor wire caught him a few times, scoring lines across his exoskeleton, and the plasma turrets hit him twice, sending him sprawling. But he finished in 14 minutes and 37 seconds, which was apparently quite good. Beat that, human, Zilnor panted, mandibles clicking in exhausted triumph. Okay, Jake said and stepped up to the starting line. The course began with a sprint through what looked like puddles but were actually shallow acid pits. Jake ran through them without hesitation. His boots started smoking slightly, but he did not slow down. Is he supposed to just run through acid? Dr. Quillick squawked, wings fluttering in concern. Human skin has a higher pH tolerance than most species, Jake called back, somehow hearing her despite sprinting. Also, these boots are synthetic. They'll hold for a bit. The razor wire section involved crawling under strands that would slice through inadequate protection. Jake hit the ground and low-crawled through like he had done it 1,000 times. The wire caught his uniform, his arms, his back, leaving shallow cuts that started bleeding almost immediately. He is injured, Dr. Quillick said, medical scanner in wing. Multiple lacerations. Why is he not stopping? Jake emerged from the razor wire, bleeding but moving, and immediately started sprinting again. The plasma turrets tracked him, fired, and hit him square in the chest. He stumbled, shook his head, and kept running. The stun setting should have incapacitated him for at least 30 seconds, Vexthor said, checking the turret specifications. Jake got hit 2 more times before reaching the final obstacle, a climbing wall covered in slippery gel. He scaled it in what looked like defiance of physics, dropped down the other side and crossed the finish line. 11 minutes 42 seconds, Blorp announced, sounding confused by his own equipment. Jake bent over, hands on knees, breathing hard. Blood dripped from his arms and back. That was intense. Good course design, sir. Dr. Quillick swooped down with her medical scanner, practically shrieking. You are injured. You are bleeding. You were stunned multiple times. Why did you not stop? I mean, it hurt, but I could still move, Jake said, straightening up. Didn't seem worth stopping for. Your pain tolerance is abnormal, Dr. Quillick said, scanner beeping frantically. Your adrenaline levels are 3 times higher than they should be. Your blood is clotting at an accelerated rate. This does not match any baseline physiology I have studied. Humans are persistence hunters, Jake explained, accepting a towel from a stunned cadet thump. Back on Earth, we evolved to chase prey until it literally died from exhaustion. We don't give up easily. Also, adrenaline is basically our body's way of saying, ignore the bad stuff and keep moving, so that helps. Your planet has animals that hunt for sport? Zilnor asked, clicking nervously. Oh yeah, lots of them. We've got big cats, bears, wolves, sharks, crocodiles, snakes with venom that can kill you in minutes, spiders that make you wish you were dead, plants that cause chemical burns just from touching them, weather systems that can flatten entire cities, and we haven't even gotten to the really dangerous stuff. What, Vexthor said slowly, is more dangerous than what you just described? Other humans mostly, Jake said. We're pretty competitive. There was a long silence. I want him on the advanced course, Vexthor said suddenly. The one we use for elite special forces training. Sir, Blorp gurgled desperately. That course is not rated for someone who ignores pain and has apparently weaponized his own stubbornness. Do it anyway. Jake ran the advanced course in 9 minutes flat, breaking the previous record by 4 minutes. He also broke 2 automated targeting systems, 1 reinforced climbing net, and Blorp's will to live. I am putting in a request for additional repair budget, Blorp said, making notes on his datapad with a pseudopod that shook slightly. Also, hazard pay. Sergeant Vexthor was not accustomed to failure. His species had perfected military training over millennia, and he had personally shaped over 2,000 cadets into elite soldiers. But Cadet Jake Martinez was making him question everything, including his career choices and possibly the fundamental nature of reality. If the human is physically resilient, Vexthor announced to his training staff, then we will break him mentally. Initiate the psychological endurance protocol. Dr. Quillix's feathers ruffled in concern. Sergeant, that protocol is specifically designed to find cognitive breaking points. It involves 72 hours of complete sleep deprivation combined with high-stress tactical simulations. Most species begin hallucinating by hour 48. Excellent, Vexthor said, trying not to think about repair bills. The human will learn that mental fortitude requires more than stubbornness. The protocol began at midnight cycle. All cadets were sealed in the Tactical Simulation Center, a massive room filled with holographic environments and combat scenarios that adapted in real time. The goal was simple: stay awake, stay functional, and complete missions that became progressively more complex and stressful. Hour 12. Zilnor was starting to look tired, his compound eyes less focused. Cadet Thump was slower, his rock-like body struggling with the sustained activity. Jake was drinking something from a flask he had brought. What is that? Vexthor demanded. Coffee, sir, Jake said. It's a human stimulant. We invented it specifically because we needed to stay awake longer than biology wanted us to. Want some? That is not regulation. Oh, sorry, sir. Jake put the flask away but looked deeply disappointed. Hour 24. Most cadets were visibly struggling. Zilnor kept walking into walls during the urban combat simulation. Thump fell asleep standing up, which was apparently something rock people could do. Jake was humming to himself and getting perfect scores on the tactical assessments. Why is he thriving? Dr. Quillix asked, reviewing biometric data. His neural activity is elevated, not degraded. He should be experiencing cognitive decline. Humans have this thing called college, Jake explained during a brief rest period. We train ourselves to stay awake for days at a time studying for examinations while consuming stimulants and spite. This is basically that, but with more guns and less crying in libraries. Hour 48. It was bad. Zilnor was definitely hallucinating, having a conversation with a wall about philosophy. Other cadets were barely functional, completing missions through sheer muscle memory and stubbornness. Jake was trying to comfort Zilnor, while simultaneously acing a hostage rescue scenario that required coordinating 3 teams through enemy territory. The human is helping other cadets, Vexthor observed, watching the monitors. His empathy response is overriding his self-preservation, Dr. Quillix said, fascinated. He is sacrificing personal rest periods to ensure others maintain basic functionality. This is not normal competitive behavior. Hour 60. Vexthor himself was getting tired from monitoring the exercise. His training staff was rotating shifts just to keep up with data analysis. Jake was telling stories to keep the other cadets conscious. So there was this time, Jake said, supporting a barely awake Zilnor through a minefield simulation, when humans decided to explore our planet's polar regions. Super cold. Everything trying to kill you. No food, no shelter. We did it anyway because we were curious. One guy walked across an entire frozen continent just to prove it was possible. Took months. Nearly died multiple times. When asked why, he said, because it's there. We're kind of insane like that. Your species explores deadly environments for entertainment? Zilnor clicked weakly. Entertainment, science, bragging rights. Sometimes all 3. We climbed the tallest mountain on Earth because it seemed fun, even though it kills people regularly. We invented extreme sports where we throw ourselves off cliffs with fabric wings just to feel adrenaline. We go cave diving in underwater systems that have never been mapped. We're really bad at understanding reasonable risk assessment. Hour 70. The monitoring staff was exhausted. Dr. Quillix had consumed 6 stimulant tablets and was still barely functional. Vexithor was seriously considering ending the test early, which would be a first in the protocol's history. Jake was still going, not just going, excelling. He had stopped drinking coffee around hour 40 and was apparently just running on human stubbornness and what he called sheer spite against biological limitations. How? Vexithor finally asked, walking into the simulation center. How is this possible? Jake paused in the middle of a tactical planning scenario. Sir, humans spent thousands of years in environments that actively tried to kill us. We developed agriculture in floodplains, built cities in earthquake zones, and colonized every biome on our planet, including deserts, frozen tundra, and tropical rainforests full of things with venom. Sleep was a luxury our ancestors couldn't always afford because there were always predators, threats, or harsh conditions to deal with. We evolved to push through exhaustion because stopping meant dying. That is horrifying, Vexithor said. Yeah, Jake agreed. But it makes us really good at not quitting. The test ended at hour 72, not because the cadets failed, but because the training staff physically could not continue monitoring. Jake was disappointed. The other cadets were unconscious. Vexithor stared at his datapad showing Earth's full classification file, which included the phrase, "Inhabitants exhibit irrational persistence and aggressive survival instincts," in the species notes. What kind of insane evolutionary pressure creates you people? Vexithor asked quietly. Jake shrugged. The kind that makes you either adapt or die. We chose adapt. Aggressively. Word had spread through Station Krill 7 that the human cadet was, in technical terms, absolutely terrifying. Instructors from other divisions started showing up to training sessions just to watch. Blorp had created a new equipment category in his maintenance logs labeled Human-Adjacent Failures, and was seriously considering early retirement. But Sergeant Vexithor had one final test, and this one was his masterpiece. The combat simulator. The Dreadclaw, Vexithor announced to the assembled cadets and spectators who had inexplicably filled the observation deck, is the galaxy's apex predator. 4 meters tall, armored hide, regenerative capabilities, and a hunting intelligence that has killed trained soldiers. This simulation is designed to teach cadets one crucial lesson. When you encounter something you cannot defeat, you retreat, regroup, and call for support. Standard protocol is teams of 5 cadets working together to survive the encounter for 10 minutes. Survival, not victory, is the goal. He turned to Jake, all 4 arms crossed. I want to see what happens if you go alone. Is that safe, sir? Jake asked, but he looked interested rather than afraid, which should have been Vexithor's first warning. The simulation uses advanced holographics and sensory feedback. It will feel real. It will hurt. But it cannot actually kill you. Probably. Probably is not reassuring, sir. Get in the simulator, Martinez. The combat simulator was the station's pride and joy. A massive arena with holographic projectors that could create any environment and any enemy with terrifying accuracy. Jake walked in wearing standard combat gear and carrying a training rifle that fired plasma rounds calibrated to interact with the holographic systems. The arena transformed into a dense jungle environment, humidity included. Somewhere in the undergrowth, the Dreadclaw spawned. Beginning simulation, Blorp announced nervously. May whatever human gods exist have mercy on our equipment. The Dreadclaw was nightmare fuel. It moved through the holographic jungle like liquid death, scales reflecting dappled sunlight, eyes tracking movement with predatory intelligence. It was massive, fast, and according to the simulation parameters, absolutely lethal. Jake saw it. And instead of running, he stopped, crouched, and watched. What is he doing? Zilnor clicked from the observation deck. Analyzing, Dr. Quillix said, watching the biometric readouts. His heart rate is elevated but controlled. His pupils are dilated. He is in a high alert state but not panicking. The Dreadclaw charged. Jake rolled aside at the last possible second, came up running and used the jungle terrain to break line of sight. Then, inexplicably, he stopped running away and started circling back. He is pursuing the predator that was pursuing him, Vexthor said slowly. That is not standard protocol. That is insane, Zilnor corrected. Jake was using everything the environment gave him. Vines became tripwires. Loose rocks became projectiles, thrown with accuracy that made the targeting computer confused. He was fighting a creature that outweighed him, outreached him, and could theoretically tear him apart. And he was doing it with the kind of focused intensity that made everyone watching nervous. Human physiological response to threat, Dr. Quillix read from her rapidly updating database, includes massive adrenaline release, increased pain tolerance, enhanced strength response, and what researchers have termed hysterical strength. Subjects have been documented lifting vehicles, fighting through severe injuries, and displaying combat effectiveness that exceeds normal parameters by significant margins. The Dreadclaw caught Jake with a claw swipe that sent him sprawling. The holographic feedback would have made it feel like being hit by a vehicle. Jake rolled, came up bleeding from the simulated wound, and shot the Dreadclaw in what might have been its eye. He is not retreating, Vexthor said. Humans are persistence hunters, Jake had said. The observation deck was now understanding what that actually meant. The fight continued. Jake was not winning in any traditional sense. He was being hurt, knocked down, and by all tactical assessment, losing badly. But he would not stop. Every time the Dreadclaw thought it had won, Jake would get back up, adjust his strategy, and attack from a different angle. The simulation is experiencing processing errors, Blorp announced, pseudopods frantically working multiple control panels. The Dreadclaw's aggression algorithm is designed to peak and then transition to territorial dominance once the opponent shows submission behaviors. The human is not showing submission. The AI does not know what to do with an opponent that refuses to accept defeat. Override it, Vexthor ordered, or, I am trying. The system is allocating more processing power to the Dreadclaw because it thinks the simulation is malfunctioning. Sir, the core processors are overheating. In the arena, Jake had somehow gotten onto the Dreadclaw's back and was systematically shooting it in what he had identified as weak points in its armor. It was not elegant. It was not textbook. It was a human refusing to quit through sheer bloody-minded stubbornness. The Dreadclaw collapsed, defeated by simulation parameters that never expected an opponent to simply outlast it. Then the simulator started smoking. Evacuate the arena, Blorp screamed. Core processor failure imminent. Jake ran out as the simulator sparked, flickered, and died with a final electronic whimper that sounded almost relieved. The observation deck was silent. How much? Vexthor asked quietly. Is that going to cost? That simulator, Blorp said, checking damage reports with shaking pseudopods, is not repairable. The core AI system has experienced what I can only describe as a psychological breakdown. It will need to be completely replaced. Estimated cost is approximately 200,000 credits. The human broke the aggression algorithm, Dr. Quillix said, still staring at her datapad, by refusing to act like prey. Zilnor clicked slowly, thoughtfully. Let me understand this correctly. Humans are persistence predators that made themselves the apex species on a death world classified as maximum hazard, and then got bored so they came to space? Jake, bleeding from multiple simulated wounds and looking exhausted, shrugged. Pretty much. Also, we were curious. We wanted to see what else was out there. Every alien in the observation deck looked at each other with the same dawning realization. Humanity had not come to the stars seeking conquest or resources or glory. They had come because they were curious, and they were willing to break everything, including themselves, to satisfy that curiosity. I need a drink, Vexthor said. I need a new career, Blorp added. 3 months later, Station Krill 7 hosted its graduation ceremony for the latest class of cadets. The station was cleaner, shinier, and according to Blorp's exhaustive repair logs, significantly more expensive to maintain than it had been at the beginning of the training cycle. Cadet Jake Martinez stood at attention with the rest of his graduating class, wearing his dress uniform and the kind of smile that had become both famous and slightly concerning throughout the station. He was not just graduating. He was graduating top of his class with commendations in physical endurance, tactical adaptability, and something the instructors had labeled aggressive persistence in the face of overwhelming odds. Sergeant Vexthor approached the podium, all four arms clasped behind his back in a posture that suggested he had experienced significant character growth and possibly therapy. "Graduates," Vexthor began, his voice carrying across the assembled cadets and visiting families, "you have completed the most rigorous military training program in the known galaxy. You have proven yourselves capable, dedicated, and resilient. You have learned to work together despite species differences, to adapt to impossible situations, and to never underestimate your opponent based on appearance." He paused, and his eyes found Jake in the formation. "Some of you have also learned that when equipment has a warning label that says, 'Do not exceed operational parameters,' you should probably listen to that warning. I am looking at you, Martinez." Polite laughter rippled through the audience. Jake's smile got wider. "But in all seriousness," Vexthor continued, "this class has taught me something crucial. The galaxy is full of species we think we understand based on data files, assessment reports, and preliminary surveys. We make assumptions. We categorize. We underestimate." He looked directly at Jake. "That is a mistake we cannot afford to make. Ever." The ceremony continued with the traditional presentation of rank insignia and assignments. Jake received his with appropriate solemnity, along with a special commendation for excellence in training. He also received, quietly and privately afterward, a bill from Station Krill 7's maintenance department. 7 pieces of equipment destroyed or rendered inoperable, Blorp said, presenting the itemized list with a pseudopod that had definitely developed a nervous twitch. 1 gravity chamber, 2 obstacle course targeting systems, 1 reinforced climbing net, 1 advanced tactical simulator, and assorted minor damages. Total cost, including repairs and replacement, is 467,000 credits. Jake stared at the bill. "That seems like a lot." "It is an unprecedented amount," Blorp confirmed. "I have created a new equipment classification in the maintenance database specifically because of you. It is called Not Rated for Human Use, and it applies to approximately 40% of our training equipment. I can't actually pay this," Jake said carefully. "The military will cover it," Vexthor said, appearing behind them in that way that drill instructors mastered specifically to make cadets nervous. "As training-related damages. But Martinez, I'm going to give you one piece of advice for your career. Sir, when you are assigned to a ship, a station, or a ground unit, please inform your commanding officer immediately about your species' unique physiological characteristics. Do not let them discover it the way I did. By breaking everything. By breaking everything." Dr. Quillix approached, wings fluttering with excitement. "Cadet Martinez, I wanted you to know that I have published 3 papers on human biology based on my observations during your training. They were initially rejected by every major xenobiology journal as science fiction. I had to provide extensive video evidence before anyone would believe me. Sorry about that, Doc. Do not apologize. This is the most fascinating research of my career. Your species is going to revolutionize our understanding of Death World evolution. Also, you might want to avoid telling people where you are from until after they get to know you. The phrase, 'I am from Earth,' now causes panic in certain academic circles." The graduation reception was held in the station's main hall, which had been decorated with flags representing all 47 species in the graduating class. Jake found himself surrounded by his fellow cadets, who had transitioned from mockery to respect to what might have been cautious friendship. "Human Jake," Zilnor clicked, approaching with Cadet Thump. "We wanted to say that we were wrong about you. You were not weak," Thump rumbled. "You were terrifying in ways we did not have words for." "Thanks, I think." "It is a compliment," Zilnor assured him. "Also a warning that we will never, ever visit your homeworld. It sounds like a nightmare." "It has its nice parts," Jake said defensively. "Beautiful scenery, diverse ecosystems, interesting wildlife. Interesting wildlife that hunts for sport. Well, yeah, but you get used to it." "No," Zilnor said firmly. "We would not." As the reception continued, Sergeant Vexthor found himself in conversation with the station commander, a dignified elderly Krill who had overseen the academy for decades. "I read your report on the human cadet," the commander said. "Quite remarkable. Do you think he is representative of his species?" Vexthor considered this carefully. I think, Commander, that humans are the most terrifying species in the galaxy disguised as friendly neighbors. They smile, they help, they cooperate, and underneath all that, they are persistence predators from a death world who refuse to let evolution beat them. So they simply evolved harder. Martinez is not an outlier. He is a baseline example. That is a concerning assessment. It is an accurate assessment. Humanity is coming to the stars, Commander. And they are bringing their curiosity, their stubbornness, and their complete inability to understand the concept of reasonable limitations. Should we be worried? Only if we make them angry, or bored, possibly both. The evening concluded with announcements of the next training class arrivals. Vexthor received the manifest and scrolled through the list of incoming cadets with professional interest that turned to dawning horror. "How many humans?" he asked his administrative assistant. "7, sir. Apparently word got out that one of their species successfully graduated, and now there is significant interest in galactic military service." Vexthor looked across the reception hall to where Jake was demonstrating human dancing to a group of fascinated aliens who were definitely going to injure themselves trying to replicate his movements. "I need to request additional repair budget." "Already submitted, sir. Double it." "Sir?" "I said double it. And contact Blorp. Tell him I'm sorry." On his first day with the new class, Vexthor stood in the reception bay and watched 7 humans disembark from the shuttle. They all had the same kind of smile that Jake had worn, the same easy confidence, the same terrifying enthusiasm. "Welcome to the Galactic Military Academy," Vexthor said, his voice resigned. "I am Sergeant Vexthor. I will be your primary instructor. Before we begin, I need to inform you that approximately 40% of our equipment is not rated for human use." One of the new human cadets raised her hand. "Does that mean we broke it or that we can't use it?" "Yes," Vexthor said. "That's not really an answer, sir." "I know." As he led the new cadets toward the barracks, Vexthor passed Jake, who was heading to the shuttle bay for transport to his first assignment. "Martinez," Vexthor called. "One last thing." "Sir?" "Your species. You are all like this?" Jake thought about it. "Pretty much. Some are more intense, some are less, but yeah, we're all generally stubborn, curious, and bad at quitting. It's kind of our thing. The galaxy is doomed. Or really well protected, depending on how you look at it," Jake said with that infuriating smile. "Thanks for everything, Sergeant. This was fun." "Fun," Vexthor repeated flatly. "You cost the station nearly 500,000 credits in damages, traumatized my maintenance chief, and broke equipment that had been operational for decades. But I passed, right? Top of your class." "Then yeah, fun." Jake saluted, grabbed his bag, and headed for his shuttle. Vexthor watched him go and then turned back to the 7 new human cadets who were already examining the station's training facilities with that same dangerous curiosity. "Blorp," Vexthor said into his communicator. "I am going to need that equipment rated for human use sooner rather than later." "It does not exist, sir," Blorp's voice came back, thick with despair. "I have been researching. There is no equipment in the galaxy rated for a species that treats physics as a suggestion and pain as a minor inconvenience." "Then we adapt. Or," Blorp suggested hopefully, "we could recommend that humans train on their own death world and spare the rest of us the repair bills. The humans are not leaving, technician. They are curious. They want to explore. They want to help. And they are very, very good at not taking no for an answer." There was a long silence on the communicator. "I am putting in for hazard pay," Blorp said finally. "Approved," Vexthor replied. And that is how humanity accidentally became the galaxy's most feared military species. Not through conquest or aggression, but by simply showing up and breaking everything by existing. They smiled. They made friends. They helped their fellow cadets, and in the process they redefined every assessment of what was physically, mentally, and tactically possible. The galaxy would never be the same. Equipment manufacturers started adding human compatibility warnings to their products. Medical textbooks included entirely new chapters on death world physiology. Military academies across known space began updating their training protocols to account for species that apparently evolved by telling natural selection to try harder. And honestly, they probably should have read Earth's admission file more carefully. Right there on page 47, buried in the environmental assessment data, was a note that said, "Inhabitants exhibit extreme adaptability, irrational persistence, and aggressive survival instincts. Recommend caution when engaging with humans in competitive scenarios." Nobody had read page 47. Nobody ever read page 47. But Sergeant Vexthor read it now, standing in his office with a glass of something strong, watching through the window, as 7 human cadets discovered the gravity chamber and started asking Blorp if it went higher than the maximum setting. "To humanity," Vexthor said, raising his glass in a toast to the empty office. "The galaxy's friendliest nightmare. May they never get bored, angry, or curious about our classified weapon systems." From somewhere in the training bay there was a loud crash, followed by Blorp's anguished wail. Vexthor drained his glass. It was going to be a long training cycle, but somewhere out in the galaxy on a blue marble planet classified as a Class 12 death world, humanity looked up at the stars and smiled. They had been accepted into the galactic community. They had proven they could keep up with alien species that had thousands of years of spacefaring history. They had made friends, broken records, and apparently traumatized an entire military academy's maintenance department. And they were just getting started. Because humans, as it turned out, were very good at 3 things: surviving, adapting, and refusing to quit when any reasonable species would have given up. The galaxy had invited them to play, and humanity never turned down an invitation. Even if it meant breaking a few simulators along the way,